Hello and welcome. It is the 17th day of January 2020. My name is Derek. This is the Money Charts channel. All bets, trades of the like within each own risk and their own reward. For myself, risk reward management's job number one. I'm going to take a look at gold, silver, move into cryptos there after that, and finish off talking about daily fantasy sports, as that has been a venture I've been doing pretty much since the start of the NHL hockey season, and has most certainly been a successful one so far. So within that order, that's what I'll be talking about. And first off, gold weekly term time frame, which we've had some play within this Fibonacci level, 61.8%, which from this high and this low. A lot of entanglement with a 38.2, and while it was entangling such, a lot of these matching more actually higher lows, really more than anything. And then on the breakout, it's what a very productive way at resisting and correcting this. So when I talk about stuff of like weak resistance, well, this is one of such that would be that. I didn't say it would be that. I didn't know what the resistance was going to be like when it came up to it. I thought there was maybe a good chance, or just as good of a chance as all the many other optional items, possibilities rather, of it going to 13.21. But that's just to the message of the market. It had all of this time in here from November 11th and through like pretty much all of November, early December, to break down. It never did, as it maintained its price at the 18 average of lows. And then these few periods to get up to the highs, breaking above it, and then having a nice little noticeable break above this previous level of resistance. And now we're coming back to this previous area where we came from in here. The 18 barely starting to rise, so price action could go down a little bit more, and that's not going to destroy any of what this productive trend is. I would if the 18 average of low starts to give in here, roughly on the 14, and it's rising, so we'd be talking about like the 1490, a pierce below 1500 level. To me, I think is the real big hold for the pattern on the weekly term time frame. When we adjust this towards the daily chart, I do like how it's been grinding this last correction move down from the correct move higher within this, because there's a move higher. So we had this high, big volatile day on January the 8th. It's managed to come back down, not to 1522. That's and what's interesting is, okay, usually you do come down these fib spots if you're going to have a correction like this, and it hasn't done it yet. Okay, well, yeah, but it is showing decent strength. It doesn't look like it's going to go this low and then make a lower low from here. I mean, it could, but I do like over the last few days how it's been holding this little area here, that it wouldn't surprise me if it does manage to break out in the next couple of sessions, next couple of days, which would be, well, maybe the rest of the day, probably not, but maybe, but into Monday, Tuesday next week, you see it into like 15 and 2/3, 15 and 3/4, then that's a huge setup for this thing to really take off moving forward, I would think. Let's go to the ratio of the two being silver and gold. And this is the daily chart with just a lot of periods, and we can see for the last half of the last decade, it was gold favoring silver. There was this run here in 2016 where silver overperformed it, but then from these lows up to this high, higher highs and higher lows. Well, this high, it's higher than this, or lower than this one. And how is it corrected from this fact or the point? Well, it's not gotten to this high, but it's held its higher lows, so it's overperforming the market, and it's holding amongst this. So if we're going to have a run here, because gold's looking pretty bullish, well, this is showing strength on the 18 highs. We might be seeing a situation that gold and silver go up, but at this point gold might do better. And of course, that the silver and the wild card and the scary part about that, the setup on the gold to silver ratio looks bullish, and it does. However, the one thing that concerns me on that in particular cross, if the metals go up, is silver's a wild card. If silver it could have any given spot like 8% up in a day or 5% up in a day, and then the ratio just goes way down. Because if silver goes up like 5%, maybe gold only goes up like 2.4 or something. That in those days I think are going to be coming, but it doesn't look like it on the immediate run. It's holding pretty well on the daily chart here within the, not showing strength in the highs. It's still managing to hold amongst the 18 average. And if we look at the where it stands, the 18, we'll start with the lows. Where it says on the top 17.786. Well, the next number is like 82 cents. then 82.5, only up 0.4, and then 30 to 83, so barely up, and then 84.6, still barely up, and then 85.9. So the 18 average of lows hasn't given in yet, but it's getting very close, especially if it's not able to hold exactly the area where it's at now. But it's really got to make higher lows for this to go rising, or it's just going to literally be flat. And you can see the 18 average of highs is flat. If you look at the prices up top, all that 14.6, 16.6, 16.7, that's pretty much the same. And then 17 flat, then 16.8, 17.6 because of the move today. The very neutral situation. And until it breaks out of it, it's what that is. If gold goes higher, it just makes sense that this would, but you could have, like I mentioned, well, silver could go up 5-6% with gold being less. Well, we could be at the spot where gold goes up like 2.4% in a day, and this goes up like 1%. And the ratio does go up in a manner of that type of magnitude. But whatever the market does, it does. I realize journey versus destination. The journey on how it gets there is going to have its swings here and there. But for me, the destination of silver being, I think, a very good performing asset class, really for this decade, amongst the top ones and having great gains, to me, seems to be at very high probabilities. And amongst such as I cross over to Bitcoin, just knowing how a fiat currency is created, well, that makes it a little bit easier to say, yeah, I think there's a good chance that silver will do that. And as far as Bitcoin is concerned, you talk about your risk, your reward, and risk and everything. Let's look at it in the real world scenario for pretty much almost everybody. You own it or you don't. It's so risky to get into it. Yeah, it is. How about risky not getting into it? For you hold fiat currency, and that's risky. And an elimination of risk is, if you have the availability to do so, is diversify and hedge in every possibility that you can, given your situation. If you're holding relatively every asset class, and to me, I only consider there to be 3. And maybe there could be more, but precious metals, gold and or silver, fiat currency, and cryptocurrencies. Stuff like real estate, you need a place to live. That's not an investment. And if you're actually at the stage of buying it, that's high roller stuff. And even if I get to that stage, I don't think I'd ever want to get into that. Anyway, this setup here to me is very, very interesting, where you have your downtrend and this whole correctionary phase from this low to this high. Well, we had an attempt to get above here, and it was in a neutral spot. Didn't do it. This ultimate failed breakout, and it was one of those one-day things. And from that one-day event, it was unable to make new highs, even just consistently, like on 2 different occasions here. Yeah, we had the strength in here, and it failed, obviously. Then we've seen the weakness here and big move lower. No attempts in here to revert the trend. And barely even, not even successfully flattening the band out. Not even successfully flattening the band out to here. Small attempt to get it going here, no. And small attempt to break down here, no. It failed. Small attempt here to break it out, yeah, that succeeded. All of this type of stuff changed. We established resistance, and it's been in this uptrend. There's your ascending triangle, another leg higher, and now we're doing a little bit of this. So to me, the setup's looking pretty damn good. It to me looks like a stage where the odds of price action being up here over whatever amount of time would be like, talking February maybe. That's not a surprise. And then you talk about if it breaks above that, how volatile Bitcoin and cryptos are. It's not that big of a shocker if I find it over a short but significant period of time, or noticeable period of time, maybe like a week or a month or even a quarter. The gains just become phenomenally outrageous. Like, oh my goodness, it's August and it's $31,000 Bitcoin. It's up like 4 times. Well, yeah, I remember that 2 weeks ago we had that 42% up day. And those types of verbiage speaks are more realistic with Bitcoin. And maybe in the future you can say that with a gold and silver. Yeah, gold and silver went up 60% today, but do you really expect that to happen anytime in the next few months for gold and silver? No. And this, so you can say, well, it's not probable, but it's a heck of a lot more. And we're at the situation within this pattern, to me, I think it's looking pretty darn near good. Now let's transition this into the single hour time frame, and to me it gets very interesting. Let's put a line here. As it was making its nice first big rally, that's where its first resistance came in for its first good correction. This is a sideways correction it had over several hours. And then it managed to have this move in here. Tried to get out, but pulled back, and then this candle getting to the top, and then major breakout. Correction, a little bit of a short-term pullback, gain extension. And now when you leave a key area, I've said this on many videos, now I'm looking for this area for support. Well, let's look for it as support. Here we are. What did it do after the fact? It retested high. It successfully corrected. It showed strength at the level, but it never really did break out, and it had, I don't know if you'll call it a fast move, but it retested the low, but here was a spot for it to break down. It didn't do it. Here was another spot for it to break down. It didn't do it. Here was a spot for it to break out. Didn't do it. You can say here, whatever, but this time it did. So now we get up to this point in here. We extend the gains. And as of now, we can see that this short term is a big level. So it's went below the 18 average of lows, pretty much added as far as I'm concerned, because this is so key. This little resistance here. And I've seen it happen so many times in a spot like this, where if this doesn't succeed, you have your little attempt here. It looks like it's good. Okay, we're back to where we came from. That's a bullish situation. If it doesn't succeed and you see that this level fails, then you're talking about concise, fast moves to the downside. But there's no evidence yet that that's going to be the case. It's still holding amongst this area. We do know that it's had a decent price correction. I'm not going to show the 4-minute, 15-minute, or 1 minute, but because of this move in here, it's had that good correction. It's going to be doing its things in there. If it starts to do well and maintains its short-term moves, then it's going to be showing, it's going to need to show strength and hold in here. But when you have a break to this high, come back to where you come from and start to leave the 18 again in a spot like this, I would be considering that to be a very phenomenal setup. Now let's move on to altcoins, and let's look at Tezos on the single minute term time frame. And we're going to go back to when I showed it yesterday, and I was saying that this to me looked like a good setup in here, and well, it had a move up to previous high. So how did the market react to this after having, you can see, was a tremendous move going from 1500 up to 1750? That's a gain of like 15%, doing so over a good portion of a day. Okay, so big hold area, we got, 1719 area. Well, it obviously didn't hold it. We can see in here that we came down to it. Didn't go any further, but this period here, it's 1927. Oh, okay, that looks like it's not gonna, it's a failure. We resist this level, and then we have a little bit of a move. So you knew in here it would go down more, and it did go down a few percent. Not succeeding on this 18, and well, I guess that move is over. And we can see here that it just struggled for a little bit throughout the day, but on this attempt here, we got another situation, and it had a point where it was able to at least battle with this, support it, and get above it. However, still not holding it. We've got these lower lows and a retest of this level, and breaks it below. So the lower lows are continuing, the lower highs, okay, Is this going to be a higher low? We can take maybe inverted head and shoulders patterns, and you can see here how the pattern is showing like inverted head, that type of stuff in here. And but it could have broken out here at 5 o'clock in the morning. It didn't do it, and now it's back to this. Doesn't look so good. However, if it holds and you see it break key levels, there's where the break key level occurs. Right in here at 1711 and doing so at 9:25. That's just a little over an hour ago. Since that point, this is what the market has endured. So you have a situation of like, it's like the inverted pattern. You have a move which to me is pretty poor, but it succeeded. Meaning, oh, how'd you do? Well, you got the job done. What was the job? Get to previous high, but that was noticeable pierce below. With that being said, you got the job done. Now the key thing is holding and staying above. You can see already that this little level of point in here hit this mark, so it hit the upper end for where it came from, and there's technical analysis stuff. Oh, let's draw trend lines, and I know it's a terrible line, but what I do know is that it's not there yet as far as connecting this point, and this point, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's just like short-term stuff, because this thing gets a little bit interesting when we change the time frame out. So I'm just going to remove that bad line, and I think it's the hourly chart that got my interest. And so it does. I like the setup. I mean, all of the charts I've shown are really just that, but it's, we got from the breakout here on January the 16th, which is yesterday at 11 in the morning. You have 3 periods going high, we're higher, and with this extra volatile 1500 stamp, some nice sideways consolidation, and then 2 periods just beautifully going up from under 1600 to 17.5, a little over 10%. But how it's corrected there from the fact, to me, is just magnificent. And while I'm a big fan of this 18, you can just see how well it is playing out. It comes down towards it, succeeds for so many periods. Yes, it has an attempt again at 4 o'clock in the morning, ultimately not doing it, but higher lowing this move. And we can see for 3 periods from the red candle how it just grinds its way up, retracing within the short term, and then it breaks the short term resistance, which is like the area of like 1702 to 1711, and the low of, whether you choose 1616 or the one at 1645, it was retracing up to that previous high, and it got above it in the previous period, the 9 o'clock stamp. It's 10:57 as I'm doing this now, 2 minutes to go. But I love how it's holding this single hour time frame. To me, I just think this is ready to go right now on this time frame. Like yesterday when I was showing, I was like, oh my goodness, this looks good in the 1 minute. I mean, it was like a totally different time frame. This, to me, I would bet if I, whatever, in this, but if you're like, okay, if it's a little game where you're saying 6 hours from now, 8 hours from now, do you bet this price to be higher or lower? Damn right I'm betting this to be up. Anyway, that would be the technical analysis on that. I'm going to do a quick talk about fantasy sports next. And it's a game, really. I mean, trading markets, like I talk about crypto trading, ratio trading, it's a game. And basically what I'm doing is taking hockey players and I'm putting them together with other hockey players and playing it's like poker tournaments style of games where first place wins really good, the best, and second place wins just the second best, and so on and so forth. And the worst prizes might not even get double your payout, or about double. And it's a game where you play like 1,000 people, they'll pay like 20% of the people, and this is the profits I've had so far in playing hockey, barely over 4,000 at this stage. And I find it interesting how it's always been like, okay, you win, and then you just wait until you win again. As I started it, and I was thinking in here, oh, it's a theory that this is going to be profitable, and all the data sets and spreadsheet work I was doing was just like, oh my goodness, this is going to be good. And then a good run happens, and a grinding up correction through time, big win, and then this little correction here, big win up, and then it's been yet another correction. Yesterday, I got my losses in retracement mode back, I look at it as, because I had a couple bad games here, you can say. I gave back a good amount of profits, a couple $300, but I got that back in the last couple of days. And this sideways action, that doesn't mean anything. That's just waiting for new data to come in. That's 10,000 different games played and different paid lineups, as they call it, within daily fantasy, like DraftKings in particular. And there's just so many other ways of rewards on here for playing games that the rake is high, but they can give you a lot of rake back, I've noticed, within the games too, which is pretty darn near cool as well. And what's fun will be fantasy football. And I'm going to talk about the Tennessee and Kansas City game in particular. And I find this a very, very interesting game. I'm very bullish on the Tennessee Titans in this. I'm also got a hockey pick for tonight too as well I can share. And in this, Mike Vrabel versus Marty Schottenheimer. No, not Andy Reid. You know, Andy Reid is the modern day Marty Schottenheimer. He's 1-6 in conference. 1-6 in championship games. Andy Reid would be that as such. I get those two confused, and I'm intentionally saying that way because it's a conference championship game on this Sunday. At the start of the season, it was almost pre-planned. It was scheduled. AFC championship game is Kansas City versus New England. Well, one of those two was right. The Baltimore Ravens had something to say about that relatively early, but not too early in the season. They didn't do too good the first month. I think they were 2-2, but then they just dominated the rest of the way. Kansas City had a small injury to Mahomes and struggled a little bit in the early midseason, but they got it going at the end. And Kansas City, Baltimore, and New England were the teams. But then Tennessee had something to say about that. They've already taken two of those teams down on the road already. They went to New England. They went to Baltimore. They took them down. Now they're going to Kansas City. Mike Vrabel. This gentleman who played many years with the Patriots was coached under Bill Belichick, of course, and won many of his games. He's actually 16-4 in his NFL career as a coach and player in the playoffs. And his coaching career, he goes to Alabama after his career is done, where he played. I believe it was Alabama. Mainly being coached as like a defensive line and linebackers coach, I think for 3 or 4 years. And then he moves to the Houston Texans, and he just moves up the rung ladder very progressively. Amazing. Starts off as a defensive line coach, then he becomes a linebackers coach for a few years. 1 season as defensive coordinator with Houston, and then after just 1 season as a D coordinator, Tennessee says, I want him as coach. Goes 9-7 last year, and 9-7 again this year. But having quarterbacks like Marcus Mariota and such, ever since they got former Dolphin Ryan Tannehill in play, he has been a very effective game manager. But Derrick Henry right now is unstoppable for them. I would not be surprised at all if the Tennessee Titans happen to win this game outright. It's going to be tough for both teams because Patrick Mahomes is that damn good. However, a couple days ago, don't know why he said it, but Tyreek Hill, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs, basically stated that not only himself, but the rest of the offense is uncoverable, and it's going to be pretty easy for their offense to control the ball on the game. You can believe that. You can say that to your teammates, but I think that's a huge mistake that he said that on the media because you know that Tennessee's going to hear it. And we move to hockey now, but I've already been able to win through last week's games 9 entries into the Super Bowl, $10 games, and I got like hundreds and hundreds of satellites of playing for again this weekend on the football games, but mainly going to be playing the Derrick Henry and those types of stacks in there. I want to win like dozens and dozens and dozens of them. It's a fun game playing such. Now let's talk about this. I'm going to talk about this Tampa Bay Winnipeg game from a perspective, and I think this is a sneaky play on the Winnipeg Jets to take down what you might think is a hot Tampa Bay Lightning team. Plus 121 means you're risking 100 to 121 profit on it. Of course, I'm going to be playing this in the showdowns in fantasy hockey within the gains that I got. It's just so much more profitable, and I've got other ways of playing it. But of course, I'm going to be focusing because I think Winnipeg's going to win this game. Let's take a look at it. First off, though, Winnipeg comes in with a record, and I just add these numbers together. It's stupid to me. You have this means wins, losses, overtime losses, and shootout losses. Well, why don't we have a category for overtime wins and shootout wins? I mean, shouldn't they be comparable side by side? Just add these together. A loss is a loss. 25 wins and 22 losses. 28 wins and 19 losses. Tampa's the better team. Tampa comes on the road with a record of 13-10. So they're actually positive on the road. That's productive. And Tampa at home is actually under 500, 11-12. Yeah, I like Winnipeg. Yeah, really. Let's take a look at more on the game. And to me, this is nothing more than a spot situation. And the fact that the spot has resulted Tampa doing what it is just makes it stronger. I don't care about these trends. I'm not even going to read them. This in here, how they played. Oh, that's their future games. That doesn't matter. Actually, it kind of does because... Oh, this is our last... Oh, this is even stronger. This is the last game before the break for them. This is not fair. It's just not fair that the schedule makers did this to Tampa Bay. New Year's Eve, 6-4, they beat Tampa Bay. Then they get one day off, and they go to Montreal, and they win 2-1. Another day off, they go back home, and they play a back-to-back with Ottawa, Carolina coming into town. They take care of business. Then they have to go on the road, and they go pretty far. They get a day off, but they go to Vancouver, and they just destroy them 9-2 in Vancouver. And then they go south a little bit to Arizona, get a day off, and they shut out Arizona 4-0. Only one more day off again, but they go back home. Okay. And they beat Philadelphia 1-0 with no days off, but they're at home. And you know what? That's not, even though they lost the next game, they should have won. I don't get too concerned on this spot, although they were kind of tired coming in. Let me figure, December 31st, this was already a lot of games, and a bad New Jersey team goes into, at home anyway, defeats Tampa Bay 3-1. And then they travel. Then they go back home, and a really bad Los Angeles team goes to them, and they have to beat them in a shootout. So they didn't really take that much care of business. You can see the money line here was -277. That's how big of a favorite they were, and they won it, but they didn't look too good. There's only 2 losses on here, but they lost last night in Minnesota. They only scored 1 goal against Philadelphia. They only scored 1 goal against New Jersey. And they only scored 2 goals last night. And this is the travel spot. So we have the 12th, where you're in New Jersey. You go back home just for 1. And then you have to travel into Minnesota. And then last night they would have left Minnesota, I don't know, maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. What time would you leave to go to a plane to Winnipeg? And then you have to fly, and then and then you're looking forward to the All-Star break and everything. To me, this is just that type of spot where I think Winnipeg can take care of business. And with Winnipeg, they still got to play again before... I mean, January 29th, 21, and 22, they got to play. Which is before the All-Star break is... yeah, so that'd be just before the All-Star break. And they go to a bye week. This is like literally the game before the bye for Tampa Bay. So this is where they have bye weeks. Some teams have it before the All-Star break, Tampa being one of them. Some teams don't. Winnipeg being one of them, they'd have it afterwards. So to me, they're in the full hockey gear. And their last game is January the 14th. So they've had the 15th and the 16th off. They've been able to have their normal practices. They're probably having a morning skate right now as I'm doing this video. It's 11:12 a.m., but it's 10:12 a.m. in Winnipeg. And that's 10 o'clock is the more time when they have morning skates. And I just got to think that this team is going to be out there playing well. Connor Hellebuck is a fantastic goalie. 4-0 share, and I watched that game against Winnipeg. That was a fantastic game. He made a lot of big saves. There was a lot of posts in that game though too. There was, but still, it was one of those die and live by the post type of games. And when you look at some of the games they played, they're not doing the greatest, but they've had tough competition, and they have tough competition again. But I think they do it in a good spot. Vancouver's a relatively decent team they beat. Nashville, they fired their coach. I mean, the fact they didn't score was pretty bad. Kyle Connor is really hot right now. He's getting the puck in the net well. Laine's putting it together pretty decent. They lost to Boston 5-4. I mean, yeah, but that was Boston too. They did beat Toronto, which is a good team. And then Montreal, they beat them. Another game against Minnesota, lost 3-2. They lost to Toronto 6-3, but they beat a very good Colorado teams, 7-4. And then they're very good St. Louis team. So and that's continuing on. They've just had a lot of difficult opponents. Again, though, I think it's the spot that they are put themselves in. Coming into this, is there any type of sandwich spots? Chicago, Carolina, Columbus as they head on the road for a trip. I think that this is a good spot to play where you're playing a home game for Winnipeg. Thank you for tuning in. Have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.